All right, welcome to another episode with Alex Paradies from Taproot. Alex, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here.
Glad to be here. Friday, but no Hawaiian shirt. You already got that out of the way earlier in the week, right?
I'll have to go to the coffee table topic for that.
The coffee, the what
To
topic?
learn about a Hawaiian shirt.
Oh, right, that's right. The community site. If you watch the coffee topic we recorded earlier, we talked about the Hawaiian shirt. So we are going to cover a topic. I know I wrote about this back in 2019. Off off the line we were joking about how that might as well be 100 years ago. That can't still be valid, and it is. And we're going to talk about why, as safety professionals or other professionals in any industry, really need to still kind of stay connected to their craft, the industry, or if you work in a large company, get outside your site every once in a while and see what's going on. So we're going to talk about some strategies that you can use to do that if you find it difficult to poke your head up every once in a while. And then we're also going to talk about, obviously, the Taproot Global Summit coming up in May, right? First week of May.
The last 2 days of April, first 3 days of May.
2024, that's right. And I will be with you down there. Is it just outside of Austin, Texas, or technically in Austin?
It's outside of Austin, Texas at the Horseshoe Bay Resort.
Horseshoe Bay Resort. And we're going to have the information on that for you guys if you're interested. But that is why I thought it was a good idea to talk with Alex, because we were talking about all things, summit and conference. And I thought, not enough and I don't know if post-pandemic, I think folks are still getting back to traveling and going to conferences. I know last year was a big year for conferences. Was that the same for you all?
Yeah, it felt different, and
Okay.
that's the thing that I think is most important, because if you were going to conferences in 2019, like when you wrote this article, there was a certain feel, and for us, we had our 2020 conference was in March. It was, I think, March 3rd or something like
Well,
that. It was
right
like
at the beginning of everything.
it, it was the week. It was the week that they announced the European travel ban.
Oh,
So 2 weeks out, a week before the summit, we start getting like calls from a couple clients about, are you guys having this? We're having some things. Our companies, a week out, we lose 50% of the conference, has to, back out.
mm-hmm.
In the conference, they announced the travel ban. We have a lot of Europeans and people from other countries. They're flying out on Thursday. It was a wild summit. We had a lot of good stuff, but also it just, you can remember. It'll be one that I remember just for how hectic it was for people. And then immediately we leave the summit, go into lockdown. So, we had that change at our conference.
Mm-hmm.
The next year, 2021, we were the first conference held back at the Knoxville Convention Center. And we did a hybrid conference where we had both in person and virtual. And so, again, we had to take the challenge. Well, okay, what's important at a conference? Well, networking, the feeling that you get when you have people. So, virtual conferences don't feel that way. I don't know
Right.
how many you do. They
Plenty.
don't feel the same.
No, they
They
don't.
don't. They don't. And so what we did is we tried to say, okay, how do we make the virtual people feel like they're engaged? And also, how do we make the people that are there interact with the virtual? So we had big screens that we had everybody on. And so we had all these virtual people there with their cameras on, sitting up there with the screen, and you could see them and they could interact. And we tried our best. It still felt different, and it
Yeah.
wasn't the same. But again, you do what you can, and so that was the mindset of 2021, 2022, and 2023 finally started to feel like normal conferences again to me. Like,
Sure.
the people were there, they were friendly, they were happy. We didn't have any virtual stuff, and so it was, people felt like they were happy to be back in conferences and meeting with people they hadn't seen in 4 or 5 years.
Wow, that's crazy. I One thing, and we'll get into how to get the most out of a conference and why it's important. And I guess we'll kind of head in that direction now with this. And you said something that was interesting, like it feels different, like the virtual stuff feels different, even virtual meetings. Um, so for me, I was at a conference. I attended or logged into a conference, and the number of people in a session or like a round table where we were supposed to be interacting and discussing were the amount of comments dropped in the chat when, in the window of, hey, I'm here, but I got to drop in about 10 minutes for a call, but I'll be back. And I'm like, you're at a like, treat it like you're physically there. Like, everyone tries to do everything. And so
Yeah.
one of my tips has always been act like you're going on vacation. Like, this is an opportunity, even if you're tasked with bringing best practices back to the company and presenting what you learned, and like, this is what's happening and we haven't adapted. So, that's something to consider. But in order for you to be present, to be open to those ideas and see those opportunities for what they are, you have to be present, I guess, is a hipster new age way of saying it. um Even physical conferences, when I was at one last summer, the folks dipping out, and then you go out and see them in one of the chairs out in the common areas, like on a call. Yeah, hi, Wade, thanks for hopping on the call. What I want to update you on. And I'm like, can somebody else do that? Like,
Yep.
and then we have this fear of, well, then I'm not needed. If, or you know what I mean? If somebody else does that, then I'm not needed. So I have to, and it's this career fear of, I have to do everything to prove my value. And it's
It
like,
won't be done without me.
correct. Nobody else
Yeah.
can possibly do this.
Nobody
Hey,
else
I
can do
I make no bones about it. I know every company I've ever been at is, for the most part, still around. With the exception of, I think, one, but that was 18 years. That was a long time ago. Um, yeah, they'll survive without us.
Yeah, I think having, people think about having a PACE plan, which is, for users who don't know, PACE would be, listen, it's a primary, oh, adjacent. I don't remember all that
Yeah,
contingency emergency. The primary, adjacent, contingency, and emergency, I think is what it is. Can't remember what the A is. But oh no, primary addition. Actually, I don't know. Anyway, it's the second person. Whoever's the second person
right,
responsible. So they think about having a PACE plan for their workers, right? We have a critical asset. We got to make sure that we always have somebody that can run it.
right,
But they don't think about secondary people for, engineering, safety, quality jobs so much. So you get this pressure from your organization of, I can't leave to go learn, to go build my, personal knowledge base. I can't leave to do that.
right,
So I either have to do only virtual conferences because I got to be present, or I just have to be on call the entire conference. And I think you miss you miss the value of getting immersed in a conference. And I think there is so much value in getting not swept up, but swept up.
right.
Getting making those connections and experiencing things with everybody else that's at the conference.
Yeah, I think one of the tips I wrote about, and there were only four in that short little blog. One of them is, treat it like it's a class, like you're back at college or you're in school. Treat it like a class. Like, I'm here to learn. I'm here to ask questions if I don't understand something, or if something piques my interest. I want to dig into that a little more. Take notes. Like, that's the mindset that comes to mind for me is, if I'm learning and developing as a professional or even as an individual based on the conference, I need to be in that learning mode. I need to switch. And you're not going to be able to do that if you've got half your brain worrying about this call that's coming up in 20 minutes, and you're listening to the speaker and going like this, and listening to the speaker and going like this, and you're not listening. You're not listening to anything. You're worrying about how that last 5 minutes that you have before you got to dip out and jump on a call. And the other thing you said was interesting, the value of learning. And sometimes it's not the individual, right? It's the organization doesn't see the organization is made up of people. So I guess it's still people. they don't see the value in, like, hey, I hired you, Alex. You're the expert. You why no, stay here and help us fix stuff. And you're like, hey, I want to go to this conference. And they're like, why? What? You know everything already, don't you?
Yeah.
I know they don't think that overtly, but I'm saying it that directly to make a point. Do you find that some individuals want to go out and learn, but they may not have the support of their organizations?
Yeah, and you can never tell because again, when we run a conference, so there's a bit of a. I talk to people a lot about coming, and there's some people where maybe their organization is going through a restructure. Maybe their organization is going through some financial issue and budgets are on lock. So I get when it's that kind of situation. I think companies are short sighted oftentimes when they're doing that.
Yeah.
But I get it. If you're going through a restructure, getting the budget to go travel somewhere can be difficult. Hopefully what your organization is doing is planning for budgeting for certain members or every member that's in certain fields to go to conferences. So my recommendation to people is submit a budget before you know the conferences you want to go to.
Yeah.
Get that money in place so that you don't have that problem of, well, I got to ask my boss now, and it's going to be a tough sell. If you've got that in place, it'll help make that easier. So make the sell early to your boss about these are conferences. I want to go to 2 conferences next year. Can we put that in the budget for this year? Do those kind of things now will make it easier for you to overcome some of those hurdles later.
Yeah, I talk to colleagues that they're, and I'm not even exaggerating, and they will tell me that every 12, 18 months, there's a restructure. There's a shuffle,
Yeah.
team shuffle or something. And it's like, so you never, and that's, I don't know if that's an excuse. It's almost like secondary excuse. It's not the primary excuse somebody would give, but that's an unfortunate byproduct of this constant trying to improve the organizational structure and shuffle people around, is that you can go 2, 3, 4. One gentleman told me 7 years since he's been to a conference because it's constant change. They're in a
Yeah.
constant state of change, which and what he was telling me was it's good for the business because that's how the business is set up, to constantly iterate and improve. And it's always been good for the business. The problem is, as a result, it's like you never really get to take a breath. It feels like, from the team
Yeah, and
structure.
it impacts your personal development.
Yeah.
So I think conferences are a good place for personal development and networking with people to kind of grow your knowledge base because we only know so much.
Yeah.
And yes, you might be an expert in a specific field, but when you can go to a place that you can meet with other experts in the field, share ideas, and meet with your peers, it generates new things, and there's value. So first, I would say communicate that value. Um, if you want to go, you'll find a way. I
Yeah.
mean, we've had people that pay out of their own pocket. I
Yeah.
prefer it, get your company to pay for it. But, sometimes if a company's struggling, but you still want to do your personal development, paying out of pocket makes sense.
I
So
have done
find a
that. Yeah. And I think that falls into the category of, if my employer, for one reason or another, is not able to support this at this time, right? Which we understand there's times where that happens. I'm still responsible for my career development. I own that. Like I'm not at the mercy of somebody else. This is my chosen profession. So that's an easy investment for me. Well, easy decision. It may not be easy financially sometimes, especially if the conference is in Spain, and I'm in Ohio, that could get costly. But, and we were talking earlier about something let's think in terms of two categories of development and learning, um, if we can use those terms. And that would be personal and professional development, like the foundational aspects of our profession. right? And then with Taproot, and system improvement, we're talking about quality systems. We're talking about human error, human factors, root cause analysis. So those types of things. So foundational like things. Let's recalibrate so that I go back to basics and everything like that. And we were talking earlier about how your thoughts. Well, I'll let you say it. What are your thoughts on some of the research and development that has been done in, for example, human factors? Um, what we were talking about earlier.
So I would say, when I'll say maybe slightly, when I look for conferences for me, so I look for human performance conferences a lot, and I want to look for conferences that are about topics that I think are foundationally important for human factors. So if I'm looking for a human factors conference, I'm not going to be looking necessarily for conferences that are all only talking about AI.
Gotcha.
That AI is important and really interesting, but I think for most of us today, it's not going to impact your job for the next few years at least. So, from a professional development standpoint, I want to keep track of these things, but I don't think that it's going to be flip the switch tomorrow and safety professionals are going to need to be experts in AI. So I would look for conferences that are going, okay, what are the foundational type issues that we're having related to um, work, getting people to do the follow the rules and getting people to um, set up their systems properly, and what kinds of best practices can we do to make things easier to do right, hard to do wrong,
Do
right?
wrong.
I know
Yeah,
you love that definition too.
I
And
love it.
so
Yeah.
when I'm looking for conferences from a human factor standpoint, I'm looking for those type of topics, ones that may not get the flashy research numbers at the time, or research dollars right now, but are a little bit more applicable into day life. So I think there's a side of when looking for conferences, looking for things that are going to directly apply to you, but also you should look for conferences that have those development aspects. So I'll give us some example because this is the way we do it. We have a pre-summit course 2 days at the beginning, and then we have our actual 3 days of the conference, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're doing is we're giving people time to come in. They can go learn at a specific course that's going to teach them a skill. So we got our root cause analysis course, but we also have things like we have Vincent Phipps, who's a speaker. He comes and does a 2 day course on basically how to speak authoritatively, how to brief and communicate better and communicate your information better. He's a really fun, energetic speaker. And so he's got his communications course that he does. So that's not something that's going to make you, better at knowing these topics of safety.
Right.
But how many of us in the industry do training? How many of us in the industry do briefings, do speaking in front of groups?
Yep.
Well, having those skills can help you with that. So we try to balance in our conference the human performance elements. So we've got safety tracks and human performance tracks and investigation tracks, but we also have I always call it the fluff. It's not the fluff track in reality, but it's a fluff track to me because I'm made way too pragmatic of a person. But it's the track that looks at things like the psychology and communications and
Right.
those soft skills that make us better at our job and help us in our career development. And so we
Yeah.
kind of balance those in. So I always look to say, hey, don't discount those because you can learn just as much about things that will help your personal development, which will, again, that affects your career, makes you more likely to get promotions, makes you more likely to get new positions and new opportunities. And so look at those personal development sessions in conferences just as much as the technical sessions.
And I know we're going to do a session as well down there. You, me, Mark, maybe anybody else that wants to join in. It'll be a melee. We're going to talk about something along those lines, and with my recent book, Rethinking Safety Communications, I kind of try to bridge both. Like there is a technical aspect that you need to know. There's some psychology backed information that we can use to drive more effective communications, having a communication strategy, identifying the channels that you use within your org to communicate, and what are they good for and not good for, so you can right size the message, how to adjust the message for the channel and for the audience. There's a technical piece to it, but then there's also this effective use of storytelling. Like, this is something we have to learn and get better at. And I used to say this a lot. I know, anybody with children that are right around high school, and it's all about, I got to be the smartest person. I've got to be the smartest at whatever I do. And I always go, well, it's good. That's good. Yeah. Technical. You got to know something. But it's useless if nobody likes you,
Yeah.
if nobody wants to listen to you, or because you can't take that knowledge that I'm so smart, and you can't turn that into communication that is engaging, that people want to hear and want to receive. And so I agree. I love that you say that, professional development, that technical stuff, but the personal development, you have to have both. And we've
Yeah. Those
all
are
known
counted.
those people. When I worked at AFRL, the Air Force Research Labs, it was common. It was a joke, but it was based on some truth, that these were some of the smartest scientists. It was like, oh, just don't let them out of the lab. They were so socially awkward. God bless them. But they weren't the ones presenting the data and the programs and the research. It was always somebody that was engaging and charismatic, that was able to take that data and distill that down to like what the rest of us could understand and take away from it. Um, and so that part of it, the foundational stuff.
Yeah.
And we were talking earlier about foundation. How much has changed in let's say in your world when it comes to human performance? How much has really changed over the years? Because we were talking about
So
sometimes you do a Google search and you'll see an article or a paper and it was like 2018. You're like, I want to get something more recent. It's like, what?
so
Like, that didn't exist
first thing
back
I
then.
think about. First thing I think about, how much have people changed in the last 100 years?
Right.
And it's really not that much. I know it feels like it's a lot. People like to think we were cavemen at 1900. It's
Yeah.
not. We weren't that different. They're still humans. Were the same. A lot of the early research in human factors looked at a lot of these foundational questions, like how do we get people to be more consistent at work? And so things like procedures came about, things like looking at how people interact with equipment. Well, those fundamental things of how people interacted with knobs, levers, buttons, all of those are still applicable to the digital space, whether
Right.
it's a
A touch
physical
screen.
button or
Yeah.
a touch screen.
Right.
The fundamental principles still apply. Now, there are some differences that we now interact with from a technology standpoint.
Right.
This is one of the reasons why the iPhone was so much more revolutionary than, say, the BlackBerry or some of the early competitors to the iPod and iPhone. And it was because they had a better understanding of the foundations of human factors. One of the guys, and his name's escaping me at the moment, but he was the lead designer for Apple for a number of years, and he wrote a book called it's the everyday. I think it's everyday use. No, it's the everyday use of normal things or something like that. It's
Okay.
something along that lines. If you look up everyday use of normal things, it'll come up. It's a yellow book and it's got like a teapot on it. But he was a human factors, and he talks about how your parts and your information, how you gather information and understand and consume knowledge, and how that helps you interact with things. Well, that's applicable to equipment and that's applicable to software, because the same way that people understand how to interact with equipment, you have to make your software and your digital equally as understandable. So, think of if it's got a big red button on it, you're going to want to push it, right? Uh,
Wasn't
so
there a study, like some sort of social experiment, where they put this button somewhere with a sign that said "Do not press," and they put it in a lobby somewhere of a building, and all it did was make a noise. But throughout the day, they like logged how many times they heard that noise. Like just people look going, I wonder what this does, and they'll push it. They want to push it,
our brains can understand when they see a button, you can push it,
right?
and so they call them as signifiers. And so the idea is, we look at how we signify things and how we interact with stuff, and how our brain goes, I know what to do because of the way that looks. Don Norman, that's his name.
Okay.
It's something called a Norman door. Do you know what a Norman door is?
We have we talked about this?
We might have. If your listeners have it, it's basically you look at a door and the way that it's oriented
Right.
should tell you how to function it. Same is
Correct.
true with software. So that research that he's referencing that became his talk about Norman Door, he wrote that book in the early 90s, referencing research going into the 60s.
Okay.
All of that book is applicable now still. And so I always think about, when I'm looking at the history of human performance, I think all of the most important stuff was done, 50, 60 years ago. So I think we have to, look at that and think about how we take that information that's foundational and apply it in things that are new.
Mm-hmm.
So, I have new equipment, new ways that we're working on things, new ways we're setting up processes. I can't forget those foundational human performance elements.
Yeah, and that's important. All of the advances that we can narrowly focus on are built upon those, or expanding on those foundational principles, are based on the stuff we know to be true. And so, one, if we don't understand what those are, we only understand some of the advancements that come around, and we're like, why does this work? Oh, because I think I read it's because of this, that, and the other. I'm like, yeah, but why? Where did that come from? So that's an opportunity to go back and learn. That expands your knowledge, but also not just the knowledge stuff. We also talked about, and there's another opportunity that going to a conference or getting out uh, will provide us another benefit, and that is specifically with those innovations, products, equipment, tools. You were talking about manufacturers and designers and vendors. I know this sounds like a big commercial for conferences, and it kind of is, but not a particular conference. Really, it's just getting out. It's really a push, an advertisement to get out more. And so you talked about that earlier. What were you referencing about the importance of
Well,
getting out and looking at those?
I'll state to tie into something, for your introverted listeners, for your poor introverted listeners. uh, Conferences can be stressful for people who, I'm an extrovert. I love conferences. I'll meet
Yeah.
100 people and be fine with that. That makes me energized. For some people, conferences are exhausting purely because there's so much interaction with people.
Right.
So I think that, when you're looking at these, if you're an introvert, take advantage to meet some people. Don't overwhelm yourself, but take advantage and meet some people at a conference, because you can make some connections with people that will last multiple places and last your career. At the same time, from a vendor standpoint, even if you're introverted, you need to go and talk to vendors, because there's so many unique things that you see at a conference. I always look for, from my side, and again, my work is not as much applying a lot of vendor stuff, but I'm always looking for interesting vendors, because I like to bring people that I think have created an interesting solution. I want to
Right.
bring that at my conference, and I want to bring that and have them present out something that I think is cool or unique. So I'm always looking for that for a vendor. But I think from a safety standpoint, I would be really interested to go look for vendors that have solutions to
Right.
problems. So I like to prepare. I like to prepare before I go to a conference with some ideas for what problems I'm currently facing.
Right.
So that's kind of part of my preparation and what I'm looking for. Now, for me right now, and what I do, my preparation is the type of speakers that I'm looking for, because I'm always going when I'm going to conferences, I'm going to meet clients and I'm going to look for potential speakers and conference best practices. So I kind of have those three hats that I wear while doing it. But
Right.
I prepare and kind of make a little list so that way I can kind of set my brain to what information am I looking for at this conference. And I think priming yourself a little bit, it helps focus you on the right things. So that way I'm not going to a session that doesn't matter to me. I
Right.
will always look for a session that is going to matter to me and going to be impactful. Um, so I think those are things that are important to look at who's going to be there beforehand and plan out who you want to meet with specifically.
Yeah, I speaking of introverts, one of the tips I recall sharing with somebody was go with a friend, a work friend or colleague, if that makes you know what I mean? Because going by yourself, you're right, it could be overwhelming. Um, and also, one of the other tips in that article, one of the four, was bring your safety program with you, or some part of your safety program that you're looking to improve, and then use that to benchmark. Say, okay, this person's going to speak on this particular hazard mitigation approach or technique or topic that we cover in our safety program. I'm going to listen to what they have to say, and I'm going to benchmark. I'm going to say, okay, do we do that in some way, shape, or form? So you could kind of like turn it into work if you're a workaholic and you find comfort in work and toiling away. That's fine. But that was one of the tips of like how to get your brain into learning mode, even if you're still working. The um, the funny thing, yeah, like I'm a nerd though. So I'm always looking at like when I'll see a vendor and I'll go, "Whoa, that's great. What is this?" And they'll talk to me. I'm like, not who came up with it so much, but like, how did you figure out that one, this was a problem, and that like two, like, how did you get to this? Like, I'm always, maybe that's the podcaster in me. I don't know. I'm always looking for that backstory, but it's always interesting. It's one, people complain about, like, people are either getting injured or users are complaining about form, fit, function, comfort, stuff like that. And so it's always been like, you know, necessity is the mother of invention, right? It's There was a need. They figured out a need for it. So I definitely love going around and hitting the vendor booths because I'm such a dork. But I always am asking, like, that's different than the one I saw over there. Why? What? And like, well, what we learned was, and I'm like, they always usually start with what we learned or what we figured out or what people told us. So
What we
yeah, I love that.
discovered.
Yeah, what we discovered. I love that, getting out so you can see how the industry is innovating and how we could bring that innovation back to ours. So you got the personal development and professional development, foundational skills, technical knowledge, and that. But then you also have that finger on the pulse of where the direction the industry is headed. And what that tells me is my competitors might be using this stuff and doing this stuff. Like, what, we don't want to get left behind. And that was always the joke. Um, we were talking about the hedgehog and the prairie dog. And I know this is a management fable or something. There was a book. I'm going to have to look it up now because, and it's been
That's
so
going to
long.
have to be one of your coffee table morning ones.
Coffee
It's
topic.
finally telling the story of
That's
the prairie
that's
dog and
right.
the hedgehog.
The hedgehog is nose down, just toiling away, work, work, work,
Digging in the dirt like a hedgehog does.
digging in the dirt, getting after it. And that's laudable, right? There's value in that. Obviously, we have to do work. But the prairie dog, if you think about the prairie dog, there's always somebody working, right? The prairie dogs work as a team in a community. There was a show, I think, that was very popular, of a family of prairie dogs everyone watched. But there's
Yeah.
always someone doing what? Yep. They're standing up and they're looking past that 3-foot world onto the horizon. What's coming? What's happening? What's next? And
Yep.
so I think what we need to do is we need to strike a balance. There are certainly times where we need to, and especially with folks that struggle with their career development or um, struggle with what to focus on. One, start with what you can control and see some success there, and that's usually shrinking down to your 3-foot world. There's emergencies come to mind. If there's an emergency that happens, somebody gets injured, yeah, you want to go to hedgehog mode. You want to focus on that particular problem, and there's a value there. And then what happens after? And I know you recommend this. Do you recommend, or I'll ask you, I'll set it up for you. Do you recommend in that case, you're hedgehogging an injury accident with a worker and you deep dive it, you go through your process, your training, and you deep dive it and you're done. And then you move on to the next problem. What should we be doing every periodically, or at least after every one of those incidents?
So, depending on how you've learned and what you've learned, you need to share best practice.
Yeah.
And when we're thinking about sharing, the question is, what is the critical information that people need? What is it that's relevant to other people? So, I think we've all seen those little safety bulletin ones that don't really give us a lot of information that's relevant. It's like it told us what happened, but it's not really helpful at us thinking about our own processes. So they kind of, here's your little bulletin. I hope you think about it. Onward. I think a lot of times when you have incidents, sharing not just what you did to fix the problem, but coming back to later sharing your success. We haven't had one of these problems since we did this. People have, organizational memory is really short.
Yeah. It's the
And when
hedgehog. It's the hedgehog, right?
there's always a new spot to dig. There's
Right.
always a new crisis that you're focusing on. And so building into your system this, we call it an effectiveness check,
Yeah.
but you want to check effectiveness, but then share that result. Share, it's working as we intended. It's better than we thought. It's worse than we thought. We need to come back on this one.
Well,
Share,
it's a continual, not even
yeah,
continuous,
PDCA, right?
continual loop, whether it's the
Yeah,
PDCA or the UDA or whatever you want to call it, but it is the how are we doing and what does that mean next for,
yeah,
and that's a great example of the hedgehog and the prairie dog working together, right? Of
yeah,
yes, there are times where we have to take the stuff that we've learned how to do in our knowledge and apply it to a very specific problem. And then there's a time where we have to look at how did that go? Not that thing, but that process about attacking that thing. How did that work? What did we learn? And sharing best practices with the rest of the org. That's the prairie dog. That's the here's what this means to everybody at large. Um, I love the bulletin. Getting back to that, you had me thinking about something. I call that the Smokey the Bear. So people always joke with me on this, and you're down in Tennessee. You probably see this in the Smoky
I was
Mountains.
gonna say you better be careful talking about Smokey.
I love Smokey the Bear, but
Only you can prevent forest fires.
there you go. That message right there is what I'm talking about. That is usually what we'll see in a safety bulletin. Hey, don't do this, or don't let this happen to you. And I'm like, what? Don't let what? How do I not let that? Wait, I need more information. Only you can prevent forest fires. How?
But
Tell me.
how?
Yeah. Are we
Two words.
talking? Yeah. Are we talking with a magnifying glass? I gotta don't burn ants, like it could go bad. Like for the kids, don't let them do that. Is it what do I need to do with my campfire? I need details. I need to put it out, but like, do I have to stay there for 30 minutes after to watch it? Do I need to like you see the poster lacks all of the necessary details I need to know to prevent a forest
Forest
fire.
fires.
But it's a good
You know,
campaign. I love Smokey the Bear. We get it. But yeah, you're right. I think we need to do it, and we're going to talk about this very topic at your summit. Actually,
yeah, that's kind of our topic on there. I want to mention something that you brought up, and I think it's important
Yeah.
for conferences specifically. You talked about, prairie dogs work in teams
Yes.
and the value of bringing a friend to the conference.
Yep.
So we have 7 best practice tracks at our conference, and a lot of conferences that have a lot of different things. You can't be in 5 sessions at
Yes.
one time. You can only be in one, and so we recommend bringing a group. Now we give a discount to anybody that brings 3 or more, and there's a even bigger discount if you bring 10 or more. And we had, I think last year we had a group of 17. So a company brought 17 people, which that's a lot. But you can get so much value because you are able to see different things.
Right.
And so you get these really cool moments where you had 2 people go into different ones or 3 people go to different ones, and then you see them in the breaks in between. They get back together. Oh, what did you learn? What did you learn?
Yeah.
And they're just, they get excited, and whether that's prairie dogs getting together there quickly and talk about stuff. But
Yeah.
I think there's value in a team. Bring your boss, bring your teammates, bring your coworker, bring a cross-functional team. If you've
Right.
got safety and quality,
Quality. Yeah.
again, what you're going to be looking for might be different in those conferences, but the best practices that you guys may come up with, you guys may be able to support each other in cross-functional teams that way.
Yeah, I
So
had a client that they were pursuing their partnership with OSHA and the VPP program, the Voluntary Protection Program, and so I had all of them come to a VPP conference. Their entire team, there were managers, supervisors, there were some quality folks in there. I think we had like 16, 17 people. We all went down to Orlando many years ago. And one of the assignments I gave them was that, divide and conquer. Certainly gravitate towards something that you want to learn more about, but consider if you got most of your folks going to that, consider, taking one for the team and going, okay, I'm going to go to this one over here and learn about this one because it applies to what we do or what we have to deal with. One of the assignments I gave them is when we got back after the conference, they had to give presentations on what they learned. And it wasn't, I said, I don't want to hear a regurgitation of what the speaker said. I want to hear, like, this is what I feel it means for our program or where
yep,
we could use this. And then that you take that and go, this is our project. This is our improvement plan, or we're going to put this into our improvement plan, or we're going to make this a thing we do now. And it worked really well. And it gave it provided value for the organization. The organization saw that they were making an investment and they were going to get something in return, not just sending people off to like, oh, trivial knowledge. But they actually saw the return. So I love that. You're able to shotgun it. You're able to each see and hear about different things, but I would definitely make this a habit. Maybe even propose this to your organization if you're requesting funding or a budget in general. Throw that in there and put yourself on this in the hot seat and say, but what I want to do is I want to present to the team after I get back how we can do something differently here. And again, it isn't regurgitating what the speaker said was, you know what I mean? And share like a handout. Like, no, you have to digest it and then you become the presenter. You have to completely reposition that topic or content into context of what it means for us as an organization and how we can move forward. And I think that's a good way to get the most out of a safety conference as well. So
yeah, taking back and saying what you're going to do. We have a approach with this. We do on this end of the second day.
yeah,
We get everybody in the whole conference together. So a lot of the companies that brought groups get to be in groups together, but we put them at tables and we help them build their implementation plan for whatever they've learned, right? Whatever the best practice you have, going back and saying, okay, how are we going to apply this? What is this idea? How are we going to set it up? Who do we need to get involved So identifying stakeholders, who is
Nice.
going to be, who do I need to get involved in this? Um, what's kind of the plan for how I'm going to roll this out,
Hmm.
and what development needs to be done. So we help them kind of build that plan before they leave. So that way, when they get back to the office and they have 100 emails they have to answer, they don't have to compete with making a plan from what they've learned and answering all these emergencies that happened while they
Oh,
were
I
gone.
love it. I love that. You set
So,
them up for success. You kind of help them
yeah.
get more value out of it. You're right. You mentioned that like you get back to 100 email or 100 would be nice. Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that this is very common. I hear this from other colleagues, and so tell me if you hear this as well. They get this energy. They're like, yeah, they're out. Like it's like they're out of the house, and they're like, woo, and I'm learning all this stuff, and I'm like, oh my god, look, that's cool. How about that? That's cool. And then they get back to work, and it's back to hedgehog, and they forget
Yeah.
every everything. That's like a common problem. You hear that a lot.
Yeah, I think so. This is the reason why we tell people to write things down and actually write out your plan,
Yeah.
because research has shown that if you actually write a plan out, physically write it, not type it, not
This.
not say you're going to do it, write it out, you have a higher chance of actually going back and doing this. And I recommend it for conferences in general, which is most conferences will provide you a notepad. So either use that notepad or bring your own notebook,
Right.
and write in a notebook. Take your notes in a notebook. Don't take them on your computer. I know there's those digital people. I was one of them in college. I like to use my little tablet or type in my notes. You're not as effective when you're typing notes.
Yeah.
Handwriting, even if you can't, you have to scribble a bit. You're going to have better memory retention with handwriting notes.
That's
So
interesting. Yeah.
I recommend that you really utilize that pen and paper to help commit it in your brain better.
And this is why journaling. I know some people like I don't journal, and I'm like okay, but um, journaling. There's a lot of research, and I think it's because of what you just said. There's a lot of research that talks about supporting the value of journaling, even if it's just writing down something that you learned today or that challenged you today. There's something about that cognitively about, and then that memory maybe is what it is, but writing something down. I have found that journaling, writing a lot helps. It helps the creative process. I actually am more creative in solving problems or thinking about options to approach a particular issue if I'm taking notes and I'm purposefully thinking about this topic, and so that helps me. And you're right, typing something. I always write it and then I type it. But
Yeah, hey, that's good.
I'll have folks in a meeting, younger workers, like in orientation. And I always say, laptops down, screens down, blah, blah. And they're like, but I got to take notes. And I'm like, you're not taking notes. I know you're not taking notes. You think you're taking notes. Maybe you're tapping out something that I said that was interesting. But if I walk the room, because I do that, I work the room in a
Oh yeah.
orientation or something, and I'll look and they'll have their email open. They'll have this little whizzy
Da-ding, da-ding,
wing dings
da-ding.
giving them an alert, right? And it's like demanding their attention, and you're not present. And so I always kind of, even senior people that like leaders in some organization, especially in my past, there's a company in my past that comes to mind where they all used that excuse, and these were senior operations leaders. This is how I take notes. And they would always come in and go, "Hey, everybody, just so you know, I'm not working on something else. This is how I'm taking notes." And I'm like, "That's terrible. It's a terrible look." But I don't think it's good for you either. And so I'm going to just say Alex said not to do it.
Alex said, "Don't do that."
Don't
And
do that.
I'll tell you, one of the theories, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I think it sounds right, for why hand notes are better is because it's slower,
Right.
and and your brain thinks faster than you can write. You can almost type, if you're a good typist, you can type at about the speed of think. Um, not precisely, but pretty good. And so by taking the time, you are rewriting the same phrase several times as you're writing it to make it sound better. So your brain actually thinks the words out like multiple times. So it just helps with repetition. So I think there's some truth to that. That because it's a little bit slower of a note taking, your brain's processing it a little bit easier than typing. I don't.
There's an experiment you can do for this, and that is having somebody not typing, but having somebody write, and you tell them what to write, and then count how many times they ask you to slow down. Right? And they go,
Yeah.
wait. The big dog ran through the what? Ran through the fence. Ran through the and then you have to stop and start and stop. And so when you pause, you've still got that thought queued up, right? It's still circulating upstairs a little. At least for me, I know it is, because you're right. You have It slows everything down, and I think that's what's giving it time. I don't know if it's soak time. I don't know what the hop people call that kind of stuff. It gives it time to move from short term memory over to your long term memory, which is key. And these are all learning techniques as well, which is why you want to use repetition when you're presenting, because folks are thinking, they're listening to you talk. And if you're a fast talker like me, sometimes I'm a fast talker, they're not it's going in and right back out to make room for the next thing you're saying to come into the short-term memory. So there's all kinds of crazy tricks. I'm gonna have to try that on some people. I forgot about that one. I did that in college. They had us do that. Tell somebody to write something and then see how many times they ask you to slow down.
Yeah.
What else? What other tips do you have on the value of conferences, how to get the most out of a conference, all that good stuff?
I'll say so. We kind of, we've had the do your personal development, don't discount it, bring a group, take your notes. I think the last thing I would say is don't be afraid to go talk to the speakers.
Right.
Like, find them after. I know when I speak at conferences, I always love to have people come up and say, either I'll take even argue with me. I like that anyway. I like to argue with people, so I don't mind if they come up even to argue with me. But I love to get people to come up and say, I liked this. Can you give me your opinion on this? Or what if this scenario comes up? So I always like that, and I think you get so much more when you go talk to the speakers,
Mm-hmm.
and utilize that opportunity at conferences to go and talk to speakers. I think that's just a missed opportunity if you don't.
Yeah.
And I've never met a speaker that didn't want to talk to people after the talk.
Well, what I just learned is that every other conversation we have from this point on, I'm just going to argue with you.
Well, it'll be good. It'll be good entertainment there.
It'll be good. I'm good for these little side trips here, rabbit hole. I love the yabbits. Yeah, but like they agree with you, but then they will say, but that doesn't apply in every case. I had a time where I'm like, yeah, okay, you found an exception. Like you had to figure out another way to deal with it, and you're back on track. But I mean, I love those that look for and then I love the hypotheticals. The hypothetical keeps growing, and that's a confirmation bias, is what it is. It was like I don't agree with some aspect of what I just heard for some reason, so I'm going to create a scenario that will prove this person's topic wrong or it won't apply. Record keeping, OSHA record keeping is the most famous topic, where I think OSHA record keeping is pretty simple. But everybody comes up and is like, yeah, but I had this worker once that clocked in and was on a break, but they were using their tools, but it was in the parking lot. And I'm like, and I'm just counting all the things. And I'm like, no, recordable. Yeah, but I'm like, it doesn't matter. You can't use logic. You got to use the OSHA reg. You can't use logic. Sorry. But they always have this weird thing. And I'm like, how many situations are you in where that applies? One.
But Blaine, the worker said that a Bigfoot came out and attacked him on the job site. Like, is that a
Animals.
recordable Bigfoot?
No, animals. Even in construction, I had an argument with a superintendent that were like, "That's nature," and I'm like, "They were working outside. You put them in the creek because you're building this little con-span bridge to this subdivision, and a snake came and bit them. That's a work. Like, there's a whole section of the construction standards that talks about animal bites and insect bite. Like, you can't. It's not about logic. That people try to apply their own logic to situations. But anyway, I digress. Getting back to your arguing thing, I get that one
Yeah,
the most. I get the yeah, but
yeah, but
that's a good one. I love them. All right. Hey, speaking of conferences, the Taproot Global Summit. Lay it on me. Give me the skinny.
all right. So it's April 28th through May 3rd. There's a 2-day pre-summit where you can come to basically one of our courses. They're great courses, 2-day course. And then
Yes.
the summit itself starts on May 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. We've got 7 best practice tracks: human performance, safety, investigations. We've got a track for equipment reliability. So there's a lot. I think, we have 48 different speakers, 5 keynote speakers. It's really a unique summit. It's all peers. So our conference speakers are either our own, internal instructors and people from system improvements, or it's our users, it's our different clients speaking about how they've implemented, made improvements, came up with new corrective actions and new topics. So it's very much basically a meeting of peers and experts in root cause analysis, incident investigation, and
Mhm.
safety and quality. So bring a team. You can get a discount for 3 or more people. It's at the Horseshoe Bay Resort outside of Austin, Texas. I cannot recommend it enough. We also say plan a vacation around it because the resort itself is absolutely a great time. I know a lot of people bring their spouses to these kind of things.
Yeah.
So you can find out more information taproot.com/summit. You can look that up and find us. There's a lot of great opportunity, and you can come meet Blaine. He'll be there doing a live podcast with me and Mark
Well,
on stage.
you just ruined the whole thing. I'm
Oh,
sure everybody wants to come and meet Blaine, but yes, I will
you
be
can
down
come,
there with you and
you can
Mark.
come say yeah, but and argue with Blaine at the Taproot Summit. You can come there just to argue with Blaine. So
You will find it's a very short argument because I just go, okay, then, because it's like I was a firefighter. We planned and trained all the time, and then we would go on the scene and go, oh, that's
Ooh.
not in the handbook. You adapt and
Cars aren't supposed to
overcome.
be on top of each other while we do this.
Yeah, adapt and overcome. What do you want me to do? That's not an argument. Like, okay, you found the unicorn along with everybody else. Congratulations. All right, so yeah, I'm going to be down there. We're going to have a good time learning. So what I want to tell everybody that's listening or watching, if you can see the full video for free at the Safetypro podcast community site. The link will be in the show notes with the link to the summit as well. But if you're listening or watching, the something Alex said the first 2 days. So the first 2 days, just for clarification, you're offering some of these the popular, well, they're all popular, but these training sessions, they're not part of the conference, but you can take advantage of while you're there, getting this additional training as well as rolling right into the conference. Is that correct?
Yep, there's basically a discount for attending the pre-summit and summit. So you get 5 days worth of just, great information for, I think it's like 2,300 or something like that.
Yeah.
Um,
So
but
like
there's a
stopping human
discount
error. If I want to take, I've always been interested in that course of stopping human error, and I'm going to head to the summit. This is an opportunity to nail
yeah,
both and save some money for our employer.
yep. And so they've got our pre-summit courses. We have, there's like 9 of them, but Stopping Human Error is the one I'll be teaching. We also have interviewing and evidence collection. We've got a course on equipment reliability troubleshooting. We've got a course on, I told you about the Vincent Phipps one about communication. We've got one on site management and creating an emergency plan.
Yep.
There's one for that one. There's trending, if you want to look at trending data. We have a risk management one, auditing. So there's a lot of different stuff. Again, you can find all that on our website to kind of get the different details. Most of our talks have at least a video that can explain a little bit about what each of the talks are for.
Yeah.
So
I did one of those.
Yep, there's one for Blaine. You can listen to his. There's different things out there that we've got. So if you've got any questions, you can reach out to me directly, alex@taproot.com, obviously, or you can go to our website and you'll find all the info you need there.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to see everybody down there at the Horseshoe Bay Resort. Is it a big? Have you been down there before? Right?
Oh yeah. We've held the summit there twice before. So
okay. So it's pretty big. I look at the photos and I'm like, it's not a hotel. This got a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah, they've got really great golf courses. You can go out on the lake. They've got like water sports stuff you can do out on the lake. There's like 12 restaurants. There's a lot of things.
Wow.
It's a great resort, and it was renovated 2019, I think. So it's relatively, fresh compared to, some places,
Nice. I'm looking forward to it. All right. Hey, thank you, Alex. Hopefully you get some rest this weekend. And I know you guys have been working real hard on this summit and pulling it all together. Again, everybody listening or watching, links will be in the show notes for the podcast. Obviously, if it's on the community site, the links will be in the description of this video. And I hope to see everybody at the summit. And if you do go to the summit and you heard about it from the podcast, come up and find myself or Alex. Let us know that you listened or that you watched. And you never know. Maybe I could trick Alex into continuing to do these things.
So. I always love when I hear your listeners showing up at my courses and stuff. So shout out to those guys if they're still listening. I remember you. I saw you guys.
And for the record, just to clear the air before we go, I'm not paid to say this. I have no financial arrangement with Taproot. I don't get anything from that. It's just this is kind of it captures what we just talked about. I'm a nerd. I'm always trying to learn more from others and experts in these areas. And when I stumbled across the Taproot folks, I mean, many years ago when I was at the DoD, actually, because you've been around for a long time. That's it. We just kind of got to know each other just through LinkedIn and talking. So just want to make sure everybody understands this. There is literally no, and he's not my cousin or like, well, I don't know. You could be. We could do the ancestry thing maybe, and we'll do a show about it. But no, I don't know of any relation at all. We didn't grow up together. Our wives don't know each other. It's literally colleagues, professional colleagues. So I know people always are skeptical, right? About these things. So all right, just want to
likewise, they didn't pay me to be on here, so
no, I can't afford the Alex Paradies. All right, thanks again, Alex. You have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon down at the Horseshoe Bay Resort.
All right, I hope to see you guys there.